Okay, everybody, I cannot be with you today, but I'm going to go over both your Chapter 2 test review and your 4.5 week review. And your Chapter 2 test review is at the top right now, and the 4.5 week review is here. Remember, for 4.5 week, I need to see you Friday morning. That's tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're going to take the 4.5 week live with me using the Friday Zoom link. So you're going to actually go to the Friday Zoom link, not your regular class link. You will not see me there, and I will be waiting in the Friday Zoom link for you. At that point, I will give you your codes. I'm not going to give them to you right now because you can't have them open yet. So let me go over the Chapter 2 test review first. You can download it here, but I'm going to go over the questions. If I ask you for the domain of a function, you're going to remember to give me in interval notation. So in this particular function, it goes negative infinity to the left and positive infinity to the right. So you put the negative and positive infinities, and you put parentheses because you cannot say infinity is a point in space. For the range, it crosses through 3 on the y-axis, but nowhere else. So you would say 3 with brackets. The bracket means there is a point, at least one place, with a y value of 3. Is it a function? Did it pass the vertical line test? Well, let's see. Here's my vertical line, and if I move it across the graph, it does pass the test. So you need to do these two on your own. Remember, if you have just points on a graph, those points, you just read the x and y values for the domain and range. You don't tell me from this value to this value because there's nothing in between some of these points. So just read the x and y values of the points. And I started you off. That's a -3, comma, then you would tell me this x value, then this x value, then this x value, then this x value. Okay, it's not the same as this because it doesn't include all the points in between. For 4, you're just going to plug in a -1, then a 0, then a 5, and then an 8 into this equation. And you're going to tell me what the values are. So remember, when you plug in a -1 into an absolute value, that's -1 minus 2 is -3. The absolute value of -3 is +3. Then you multiply it by the -1/3 and get -1, and then you add 4 and you get 3. Okay, so you do that for the next 3. When I ask you to tell me what the f of x value is, you're actually looking for the y-axis. So you first go to the x-axis for -5, and then you find the point on the graph and read me the y-axis value. So f of -5 has a y of 1. Okay, f of -2, you would go to -2, read that point's y value. F of -1, you go to -1. Now, which one of these counts? I think you know which one does because that's an open bubble, and so on. All right, for slope, I gave you the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's up to you to put these in properly. And remember, always give me a fraction, no decimals, and make it simplified. So if it's 10 over 2, it would be 5, right? For this one, I gave you a slope and a y-intercept. So you're going to use y equals mx plus b, and you're going to put in the m here and the b here. When it says rewrite it in slope-intercept, all you have to do is move the x term over and then divide by -7 across the entire formula. So y equals is what you want to be here. So you want this -6x to go over here. If I ask you to graph, I didn't provide paper, so just do a quick graph, but I would go to Desmos and sketch this. You can actually go in and say y equals -x minus 3 absolute value. Y equals -x minus 3. And then I forget what the other part was. Maybe it was +4. I don't know. So if I told you to graph it, you could use Desmos. And this absolute value key, you can actually press down here to get your absolute value bars. So I just did my keyboard keys, but you can actually use this for your absolute value bars. Okay. Rewrite it in, okay, we did that. Graph on paper, again, I would put that. Okay, name the parent function. So remember, the parent function for anything with absolute value bars, you can't see this, but it's there, is just y equals the absolute value of x. And then this is an up, this is a right, and this is a stretch, and this is a flip. So you have to tell me all of those. Okay, so please do not forget to tell me everything it does. Don't leave off anything. All right, and then here for point slope form, you're using the equation y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So let me put that in my tablet. Put that down here. So that point slope form, which is in your notes, is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And so you've got an x1, y1, and you've got an m, so just put those in. And then when it says through here, you first have to find the slope, and then you have to use this formula with the slope. And I would just use one of these points as x1, y1. Okay, here when it asks you for intercepts, just remember, cross off the x term if you're looking for the y-intercept, cross off the y term if you're looking for the x-intercept. Okay, and here you might want to graph that and you'll see there's no y-intercept. Okay, so for this one, they say write the function that is the parent function f of x is the absolute value of x. So I've got an absolute value of x, where the new function is moved right 6 up to stretched by 3. So you are going to have to put those new numbers in this formula, and they all go in a specific place. Here, your parent is y equals absolute value of x, and write all the words that tell me what the negative does, the 1/2 does, the -3 does, and the 7 does. So tell me everything that is happening to this graph that was the parent y equals the absolute value of x. Okay, and here they're asking you for the equation. So you're going to actually fill in some numbers here, here, and here until you get a graph that matches. And you can keep going to Desmos and checking and saying, is that graph the same as this blue graph? Here, when you write the equation of a translation that goes left 10 and down 6, you know where those numbers have to go. So you figure out which one of these it is, or you can graph it if you're unsure. When it says which are parallel, you have to find what the slopes of these lines are. Please don't say, well, whatever number's in front of x is the slope, because it has to be in y equals mx plus b form. First, get all graphs to y equals mx plus b before you compare slopes. First, make all equations y equals mx plus b. Because if you don't take the time to do that, you're not going to get the right slopes. So parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocals. So that says opposite reciprocal. Parallels have same slope. Okay, so that is your test review for Chapter 2. Please do not attempt that test. It's already open in Mastery Connect until you've done this homework and this homework. Okay, remember, I'm seeing you at 10 a.m. tomorrow on the 9th for your 4.5-week test. You can log in with Clever, and then you're going to choose the Mastery Connect app. I'll provide your test ID while you're in Zoom, so do not shut out of Zoom. And then you will have, that's not true. You will have Zoom and Mastery Connect open at the same time. Okay, so you're going to get something like this. You can actually solve this by doing what you know how to do. You know, to get x alone, you'd have to multiply both sides by 4. I said 4 over 1. And then do all your distributing and everything. Solve for x. Plug it in and check it to see if it's right. Here's another one where you're going to distribute. And then you're going to solve for x. Here's one where you're going to find the range by graphing first. Graph first, and then choose the y values. Okay, so the range is y values. Do not tell me the x values. Tell me the lowest first, and then the highest last. Some of you keep going backwards because you always want to start at the top, but it should be lowest to highest. And sometimes ranges will have brackets on them. Here you can just go straight to Desmos. That's what I would do. Use Desmos, for the love of God. Use Desmos. Here you can also use Desmos and then just tell me where it goes from the parent, or you can tell me this number, and this number, and this negative sign all do something. So this does something, this does something, this does something, this does something. So remember to name them all. Solve for k. Remember to isolate first. So you would say take the 4 over by adding it, and then divide both sides by 2. And then when you have this k plus 1 all by itself inside the absolute values, then you make your 2 equations. And don't forget to check for extraneouses. Same thing here, and it's super important. If I say the words check for extraneous, then you really need to do that because there's probably an extraneous. So if you got 2 answers, 8 and 12, and one of them didn't work, but you went ahead and circled the answer that said 8 and 12, you would be wrong on this question. So that's why you always need to check. Again, I would use Desmos. I don't know why anybody wouldn't use Desmos. It's so wonderful. And you will have Desmos built into the 4.5 week. And then this is important. So take this graph, and before you tell me the answer, translate it up too. So you need to say, oh, I looked at this graph on this equation, but don't forget every point has to go up too. Every point has to go up too. So if you forget to do that and you just tell me this y-intercept, you're going to get this wrong. It's so important you read the entire equation or read the instructions, because people who are not reading it will miss this. Okay, increasing or decreasing are your x-axis values. So please don't forget that you know that the ladybug is dropping downhill, but she's talking about these x-axis values, okay? What is the parent function? If you want to go back to the very first slide that we did in 2.6, 2.7, we said we're going to take care of parent functions in one slide, and that was these. So remember these and remember their shapes, and you should get parent functions right. Again, I would use Desmos. I don't know why you wouldn't. And remember that if you see dashed lines, that equals a circle on the graph, right? But if you see solid lines, those equal solid points on the graph. So these are all circles, so there must be dashed lines, okay? Here, your domain is your x values, and your range is your y values. Okay, so your x values go from here to here, and your y values start down here and go up to here, okay? And then I would just graph in Desmos. You can actually type this in Desmos exactly like it is. So just go straight to Desmos and see which one it gives you. And there's another one just like it. Again, there's no reason to miss these questions, because if Desmos is open on your graphing calculator, just do it. What is the range? That's the y values. Please don't forget, ranges are always y values. Some of you miss this by giving x values. You're going to start down here at the lowest of the low, and you're going to end up at the highest of the high. All right, which equation represents this graph translated down 12, left 2, and compressed? I would just graph them all until you find the one that does all three of those things. And then this one says, which equation is this graph translated down? Read instructions. So many of you will go straight to Desmos and put this in and then click on the graph that matches this, and you'll forget that you're supposed to shift it down. Read instructions. I don't want you guys missing this because you didn't know to read your instructions, okay? This is what will keep you from getting 100 on this test, is not reading the instructions. Check for extraneouses. There will be an extraneous in this. And I would make sure that I checked both solutions. So you're going to have a solution 1 and a solution 2. And remember to check both in original equation. Don't go back to the 2 breakout ones, in the original equation. Okay. And that is everything you need to know. I will see you online tomorrow morning, and then you have all the way till Sunday midnight to finish your Chapter 2 test. So here's your Chapter 2 test review. Here's your Chapter 2 test due October 11th, which is Sunday at midnight, 11:59 basically, okay? All right, I'm done. Good luck. Keep me posted.